Good morning. It is 7:20. I'm just walking downstairs for the first time this morning. And when you have a puppy, this is sometimes what you can expect. What's that? What did you do? Huh? What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? Come here. Sit. Well, this is the usual greeting anyway. Easy little buddy. But what is this? What is this? Is this the pillow? Or what is it? That's the tissue paper, isn't it? It's tissue paper. And now he has his harness. His new harness. Anyway, welcome back to the channel. It is Sunday, lazy Sunday. Well, not really so lazy. So today, leg day number 2, and then we also have check-in pictures. So we'll throw up, check-in video today on the actual tubes. But yeah, today's gonna be leg day. Haven't done this leg day now in 2 weeks, so it's been a bit of a slower week on the fat loss side of things, simply because I was at a wedding last weekend. Probably enjoyed myself a little bit too much. So leading into the wedding, kept food the exact same, training the exact same, expenditure the exact same. And then Friday was the day of the wedding, day 2 the next day, and the optional day 3, which of course I took part in. So the wedding is actually a good friend of mine. So my friend Rory, we've been friends since we've been 13, since secondary school, and all my other friends from school, who we've all been friends since we've been 13, and there's about 10 or so of us. We were all together. We don't get together all that often. Like every couple of months we'll meet up. So, anytime I do see the lads, it is very much the case of like spend as much time with them as I can and enjoy things as much as I can. So, kept everything as normal leading up to the wedding. Then even on Friday, went to the gym beforehand, went for a walk beforehand, made sure to adjust some of my meals leading into the wedding day to account for some of the drinks I was going to have on that day. A lot of the drinks I was going to have on that day, as well as like the dinners that I was going to have. But that was a day well accounted for. Saturday, pretty much I had my breakfast as normal, and then that was pretty much all I ate for the day. and Sunday was pretty much the exact same. So yeah, there wasn't a huge amount eaten across Saturday and Sunday, but there was a lot drank. And drinking 3 days in a row straight, and across those days getting minimal sleep, it's not something I would be doing all that often. It's very much the opposite of what you want to be doing if you want to make progress consistently. But from my own perspective right now, considering I am only after starting this diet, I am not going to compete until 2027. In the grand scheme of things, this diet doesn't mean a whole amount. However, those occasions with my friends, they mean far more to me than even stepping on stage ever really will, because ultimately at the end of the day, when I die, people are not going to be, kind of reading out my eulogy and saying, oh, Shane was a fantastically dedicated bodybuilder, but I prefer them to be saying, Shane was a good friend, always there for me when I needed them, and that kind of stuff. People aren't going to remember your achievements, but they're definitely going to remember, the times you have with them. So that's definitely something I place very, very high in my value list. And again, it's something that, at some point in the next couple of years, all my friends will be married. There'll be no more weddings. There'll be no more anything like that. No more stags. And I don't want to look back on this time and say, God, I wish I had actually enjoyed those more and wasn't cutting them off at the expense of just following a fucking plan. So as a result of my antics across the weekend, my weight did kind of spike at the start of the week. So let's show up on the screen what the kind of data looked like. Weight went down to 96, naturally enough. Extremely dehydrated, extremely underfed. Then once I had a day of normality, weight spiked up to the 98s again for a couple of days, and only today has it dropped back down to 97. So 97 is, I guess, it's probably a proper low, because all the 96 at the start week was very much artificial, because that was me completely dehydrated and pretty much empty. So it'll be interesting to see now what the next few kilos look like. I do have one more wedding coming up next month, and yeah, as much as I'm looking forward to it, I am looking forward to kind of that being over, because I don't have anything planned in for the rest of the summer, and I can just like have, you know, kind of straight run at this fat loss phase and get it over. Because, you know, like while at the same time, like, you know, being able to say that there are certain things that you're willing to kind of not be perfect on when it does come to like, social occasions. If it was the case that they were every single weekend, like, and they are very, very frequent, more frequent than I have planned at the moment, I simply would just say I'm not going to diet right now, because it's just not the best scenario for me to do so. You know, if it was a case where I had a very, very busy, like kind of schedule traveling, very, very busy schedule with like social occasions, I would just opt to kind of like maintain my body weight, because it kind of just sets you up for a very, very tough time, either digging really hard with your calories and your expenditure during the week, and trying to be as like, you know, mindful as possible at the weekends. And sometimes that's just that can just be a little bit too much. It certainly wouldn't be the approach that I prefer. I'd prefer to just say, hey, this is not a good time for dieting, you know. I think that can sometimes be, it's something that people run into when they leave it too late to diet coming into summer. You know, summer is usually a time when people have a lot of social occasions on, and as a result of having all these social occasions on, they want to look good. However, when they leave it too late, then they all of a sudden have to, you know, try to dig really hard at the weekend, as I said, and then try their best to manage the weekends, and that can be very, very difficult to do, especially if things like alcohol are in the mix. Which, you know, let's which, let's not get it twisted, it definitely decreases your inhibitions. But anyway, we're back on track. We're back to normal now. I'm gonna have some water because I haven't drank anything yet, and I'm gonna have my morning coffee. Gonna have my morning coffee, and yeah, then a bit of work, and then we'll do our check-in videos. Out with the little guy. Light is not very good here, is it? If you see me spinning multiple times, it is because I'm spinning with him because he's changing sides of where he wants to walk. Usually I would let him off the lead, but this week Samson decided to eat a huge ball of seaweed on the beach, and he has been very sick since. He's had a sore tummy, so things have been coming out of him in both ends. So unfortunately Daddy has to keep him on the leash today, even though he is actually quite good off the leash. Like if there's other dogs around, he'll play with them. He's very respectful when other people walk by. Like, you know, he's good with his commands. But you know, I don't want to risk him getting even more sick, so I have to keep an eye on what he's going to be eating for the next while. He can eat seaweed again in a few weeks' time, but once he's over this bout of illness, but until he's over this bout of illness, we're going to keep him on the lead. But anyway, they were the progress videos, pictures from today. You'll see I had my camera set up, obviously through what you watched, and my phone set up. So I take pictures through my phone naturally for my coach AJ, and the way I do that is everybody asks me what is that thing in your mouth, and it is a Bluetooth clicker. So as opposed to me having to set a timer every time I want to set it, get into a pose, I essentially just have a clicker in my mouth, I chomp down it and it takes pictures. Very, very handy. It makes taking progress pictures very handy because I don't have to rely on anybody else to take them, and they typically take a lot quicker. And I do find as well the quality of the picture is much better relative to what I used to do, and what I recommend a lot of clients do if they don't have a Bluetooth clicker is to take a video and then screenshot. But sometimes, especially now with the latest few iPhones, I've found that when you screenshot a video, it like overexposes the video and decreases the quality. So yeah, that's kind of why I have been doing what I've been doing. First spin of the day. So while it has been a slower week on the fat loss front, I can definitely see in the pictures that like body composition is improving. Like I'm definitely looking a lot thicker through the lower body, I'm looking thicker through the back, thicker through the delts. So all the areas where I've been doing more volume, I'm naturally looking a lot bigger. And even like the other day, I didn't measure my arms. My arms are like up over half an inch since powerlifting. So like, it's funny that my arms have gone up, right? Even though my body weight is lower. And some of that is going to be just from like, you know, swelling, from like doing more training volume. But there's definitely going to be some recouping of muscle mass that I might have lost when I was actually doing powerlifting, because I just wasn't doing as much arm work or arm volume. Whereas I'm doing more now, there's probably been some like, not newbie gains, but some muscle memory kicking in. So while there wasn't much of a movement on the scales, it will remain to be seen what AJ wants to do when I check in with him on Monday. Now, generally in this case, if I have a client who, you know, they have a solid fat loss for, you know, a reasonable reason, you know, say for example they had a wedding like I had, typically I'll just say to them, hey, look, we're not going to make a change to calories or to your expenditure for this next week. We'll just kind of get back to the plan as per usual and kind of see what happens then. And we'll wait for like, you know, 1 to 2 weeks over normality. And if a plateau happens then, we see a stall, we don't see any changes, well then we'll make an adjustment. However, I know AJ has me on a timeline to lose a certain amount of body weight by a certain date. So, you know, he might decide, hey, let's just push a little bit harder right now. You know, at the moment I feel good. Like hunger is not all that present, or like what is present is very, very tolerable. Expenditure is very handy to do. You know, I feel good. So if I was to push harder right now, I wouldn't mind all that much. And I think like from, you know, your perspective, the person who's watching this, like, I think anytime you do have maybe a slower week, fat loss training, whatever it might be, I think it's really important just to understand the context of why that might be. So I understand the context of why my fat loss on the scale was slower this week, because I had pretty much 3 days which were not usual, sleep all over the place, if not non-existent in some nights, and you know, lots of alcohol, which is going to impair a lot of aspects of metabolism and hormonal function. So I know exactly why that is. So I can, you know, kind of essentially kind of understand that when my weight goes up, okay, I know the reason for it. I know that this is how the body functions when it is dehydrated, and then it has a rebound effect when your ADH and aldosterone levels start to decrease. But give it a few days of normality, and things will return to baseline. Even if it was a case where there was a stall, that's why I pay a coach, right? That's why my clients pay me. It's having the objective eye there to ensure that you don't be reactive to that information and do something that might kind of go against your best interest, right? So for me this week, I didn't text AJ during the week and oh, my weight's after going up. I simply just got back to what I was usually doing, got back to my usual diet, my usual steps, got back to training, and trusted that when I check in with him now on Monday, after a solid week, he will make the adjustment if he feels it's necessary, right? I trust my coach to make those decisions for me, and that's the kind of trust that I expect my clients to have for me too. It's, having the client's best interest at mind, having their goals at mind, but then also being able to just say, hey, look, we just need to take the course, or we need to make an adjustment. And that's where having that objective eye comes in. We are here. Just arrived at the gym. Time to train some legs. Gonna run through the session as I normally would. I'll have some little things though to share while I'm going through it. Okay, so strap in and let's get into it. Timer on. Alright, so abs done, calves again. So 3 times a week, starting the session with calves and abs. So one big thing that you need to do if you are looking to grow your calves is do not bounce. I've mentioned this in tons and tons and tons of videos before. Still see it all the time. Anytime in the gym, there's always somebody on the calf machine, seated calf machine, they have this thing loaded up, tiny calves, and they're just bouncing away. The only thing that's moving that weight there is stretch reflex. Your Achilles tendon, one of the strongest tendons in your body, and it is allowing you to move that weight. When you pause at the bottom, you're dissipating that stretch reflex. So then you're able to move more of the weight with your muscle. This is probably one of the biggest changes that I've made over the years to calf training once I started doing it properly. That's when I saw the most growth. So if you want to stop having small calves, which is kind of the equivalent of, I guess like calves are the beach muscles of the legs, right? Like if you have small calves with big quads, it just looks like, big balls but no dick. So, ensure that you are pausing. So 2 more sets of this, and then we are into some adductor. We are logging our training during the session because one thing I found when I was working with RTS is I was really bad at filling out the training log. So I am just filling out my spreadsheet as I go. Now, one thing that I would recommend, right, on the calf tips, staying on those, when you're performing them, 2 cues that have really helped me
gonna get like better connection and feel like I'm just using my calves, my actual calves more, is big toe down. So when you're on the way down, you're pressing through the big toe. When you're on the way up, you're pressing through the big toe. Not pressing through the whole foot, just through the big toe. The next thing is, as you get to the top, think of driving your ankles forward. These two cues, you will feel, it's not like bodybuilding training is not all about like feeding the muscle, but you will feel as if the calves are more stimulated after, if that makes sense. But anyway, that was a progression on from last week. So it's 132. We did 9 reps on the first one. We did 8 reps on the second one. And here's one really important thing, right? So on my program currently, I am pretty much meant to train every set to failure. And with that, if you are training a set to failure, your reps should drop off by the next set if you've reached true momentary muscular failure. If you're able to go heavier, if you're able to do more reps on your second set, your third set, those first few sets, if you're training to failure, if you're meant to be training to failure, we're not to failure. Maybe, and this happens all the time when I'm reviewing clients' training log, it can just be an issue that they are not doing enough warm-up sets before they get into their top set. So think about that next time in your gym. If you get more reps on your back off set, or your second set, your third set, and you're meant to be doing all of them to failure, the first set is just not hard enough. So it's on to the line hamstring curls next, and one thing I want you to notice about when I'm setting up for the hamstring curls is how I pull myself into the machine, and what you probably can't see is I'm thinking about bracing through my midsection. Okay, so when we're thinking about using any type of machine, we have the advantage that we have external stability. So we have the pad, we have the handles, and we can use them to our advantage to essentially lift more load and drive more tension to the target muscle. So I was asked a question like this on my Instagram the other day when I put up how I was doing the hamstring curls, and I described how, when I grip the handles, I'm squeezing them hard, I'm pulling into them. With my midsection, I'm not just thinking about keeping my midsection loose, I'm thinking about bracing my core. So I'm trying to think about kind of keeping my rib cage stacked over my pelvis, trying to keep my abs tense, my oblique tense, my lower back tense, but my lower body, I'm thinking about pushing the quads into the pad. And he was saying, would it not be better off just to relax the whole body and just isolate the hamstrings? Now, the thing with the hamstring curl is you can only perform knee flexion on it. So the only thing that can move that load is going to be your hamstrings. There is going to be some kind of crossover from the gastroc in the initial, or the gastrocnemius in the first few inches of range of motion. However, the primary movement is going to come from hamstrings. So if you have two examples where one person is, locked in the way I was, grabbing on the machine, bracing hard through the midsection, really thinking about kind of keeping everything tight and solid, and really just focus on allowing the knee joint to do the work. There's going to be, and the opposite example is the person who is lying on the bench, completely relaxed, and just kicking against the pad, okay? So in the strong and stable example, the person who is doing that as they approach failure, they are going to be able to keep grinding hard through those slow reps because they have everything tight and stable. They're also probably going to be able to use outright more load because they have everything else tight and secure. The person who is using the more looser approach, they are probably going to have to start with a lighter weight overall, and as they reach the point of getting closer to failure, they are going to have other body parts try to compensate to complete the task. So you see this all the time. People's hips starting to shoot up off the bench, people arching through the back and getting a lot of extension through the lower back and inevitably feeding their lower back, and then just riding all over the pad. That person is going to drive less mechanical tension towards that muscle, and as they get closer to failure, they're pretty much going to be in a position where they are getting more contribution from other areas than just the hamstring. So while early on, the person who is strong and stable on the bench is probably using more energy to kind of keep themselves in position, they're ultimately gaining more in the long run. Now you could say, when I use a more relaxed approach, I feel my hamstrings more, but feeling is not indicative of growing muscle. What we know is the indicative of growing muscle is driving more mechanical tension to that muscle. So for one example, the strong and sturdy example, the hamstrings is capable of producing 110 kilos of tension. And in that example, the strong and stable example, they can use 90 kilos of load. Okay? That person is getting closer to the hamstrings potential in terms of load capacity. When it comes to the lighter or looser example, that person may have to use half the load. They have maybe have to use 50 kilos, 45 kilos, whatever it may be. And as a result of that, now they are training with less load relative to the capacity of the tissue. So what we're trying to do is we're always trying to train to the capacity of the tissue to ensure that we are going to get the most benefit. So if you've been struggling to grow muscle, think about, am I keeping myself strong and stable on this machine, or am I just going to flaccid like a cock? All right, so we're on to the real meat and potatoes of today's workout. So just did 2 sets of RDLs there. Felt kind of weird. Haven't done this session in 2 weeks, right? So I feel like my ability to brace has diminished quite quickly. Like naturally, from all the years of powerlifting, you would expect my brace to be something that I'm very, very familiar with and conscious of on deadlift movements specifically. But yeah, first set just felt a little bit weird. Probably felt a little bit more in my back than I'd kind of like to be feeling. Probably like to feel a little bit more in my glutes and hams. Like here's the thing, right? Like if you're doing an RDL, your lower back is involved. If you're doing any kind of deadlift pattern, your lower back is involved. The big thing is you probably don't want it to be the main thing you're feeling throughout the exercise. If it's the main thing you're feeling throughout the exercise, you can probably improve on something, and that thing is usually hinging properly and bracing. Because the only thing that's kind of separating, your kind of rib cage here, your pelvis, is your spine and then some organs. You can create pressure in here through bracing to keep that section nice and tight, to make it nice and sturdy, like I talked about already with hamstring curl, so that that area does not flex as much. When it flexes, you're going to be taking more load in through the lower back. So that's like the thing. It's like if you flex more through your hips, you're going to take more of the load there. If you flex more through your spine, you're going to take more of the load there. So it's probably flex a little bit more through, which is fine. My first set, second set went much better, but now we're into pendulums, and yeah, this is coming into the back end of this training session is like very hard. It kind of like eases you in the session, right? So you do abs, you calves, fucking leg curls and all that stuff at the start, and then you're into RDLs. We've got pendulum now. We've got a set of 6 to 10, then a set of 15 to 20, and then leg extension, then walking lunges to finish. So yeah, look, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna stop bitching and just get to work. Come on.
Psych.
Yeah, that set did not go to plan. It's 2 reps down from last time I did, but I'm gonna give myself a pass. It's been 2 weeks since I've done this session, but to be fair, I didn't. I could have pushed harder in the last rep. I could have pushed harder. I feel like I kind of. Remember mid-set, you're like, oh, this is actually really heavy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hit the target reps, and then all of a sudden, that's it. That's the mindset gone. I forgot like all of my own kind of rules of like giving yourself positive self-talk during the actual set versus negative self-talk, because it can be the difference. It can be the difference between like mid-set being like, I can do this just one more rep, or God, I don't know if I'm going to make it to the target reps, and that to be enough to just like stop you from trying. So we have the back off set now, and I think here's the time to correct it. Like the next exercise, the next set, that's the time to correct it. So one thing that happens to a lot of people is like they have one set that doesn't go well, one exercise that doesn't go well, and they lose the head, and the whole session's ruined. You just do another exercise. You just do the next set. Like it's not that deep. Next week, I'll just progress the fuck out of it. But now on to the back off set, and this is where I can make it count. All right, so that is today's leg session wrapped up. And one thing you might be able to see from the entire training session, there's literally one exercise, whereas using the 4 to 6 rep range. Now, social media or TikTok would try to lead you to believe that if you do anything over 5 reps, or what's it, 5 to 9 reps, it's a complete waste of time, because each rep after that, you've gotten your max motor unit recruitment, and past that, you're just getting more fatigue for not any extra benefit. And I guess, I'm not going to go into massive discussion about, rep ranges, when to use them, because you can save that for a later video. And, there's plenty of other kind of resources you can find from decent people who've kind of debunked this argument many times. But I guess when it comes to, training as a whole, right? I think this obsession with the fact that you should only do reps of 5 to 9 or whatever is trying to find a singular way to train forever. It's trying to find the most optimal way to train. And I think the thing about this is that will change over the life course. There's gonna be a time and place when using those lower rep schemes is going to serve you very, very well. But once you hit the plateau and when you hit the brick wall, you need to have other options on the table. And I think a lot of it comes from people learning about physiology and learning about things like muscle fiber types and learning how a muscle contracts and learning about things like motor unit recruitment, and completely forgetting the fact that these are very much mechanistic based studies, and we need to pair that alongside what we see in outcome, what we see in people over time. People are actually doing this stuff. People are doing bodybuilding. People who are the most jacked people on the planet. A lot of times, when you look at people who are high-level bodybuilders, they are training in a multitude of different ways. There's going to be people who are using this style, who are using high intensity, and that's all they're doing. You're going to have some people who are doing high volume, they're doing lots of reps, very high reps, and they're still getting amazing results. It should be nice to know that there's a variety of different ways to train and still get a good benefit. Because, for example, for some exercises I love doing sets of 4 to 6 or even lower. Right, I did powerlifting for so long. But if I was to do the same lat raise, bicep curls, some of these exercises where, the relative increase of strength that you'd have to expect to go from 5 to 6 reps, or to even add 2.5 kilos to a lift, is astronomical relative to adding the same amount of stress or adding the same amount of progress to the likes of an RDL, because the overall weight you're using is more, the overall weight you're using is higher, the amount of muscle groups that are contributing to lift is higher, so the expectation for progression can be that little bit more. Whereas the smaller muscle groups, where there's less things contributing to the actual movement itself, we can't expect these massive shifts in progression week to week to week. But then also, when we do look at outcome-based studies, we see from multiple of them that we can train to failure, we can train a little bit further from failure and still get similar results. We can train a multitude of rep ranges and still grow muscle, and it's not all edema. And we see this in people who are actually doing it in practice. Again, we see it in bodybuilders, we see it in strength athletes. When they're going through these more kind of hypertrophy based phases, they are typically using more reps other than just doing sets of 5 and below, right? If that was the case, if that was the optimal rep range, why wouldn't all the pro bodybuilders in the world be doing that? It's not because of new information, because all this mechanistic shit is decades old. It's because there's simply more than one way to skin a cat. And for me, I've been doing powerlifting for the last 5 years. Me coming to this style of training now, where I'm doing more reps, is likely to yield me more growth than if I stuck with those lower rep schemes. And the reason for it being is because it's an untapped avenue, okay? I've likely kind of gotten as much benefit from those lower rep ranges as I potentially can within the exercises I was doing them on. Whereas now, I'm having a big uptick in volume. That's going to be one thing that's going to drive more mechanical tension to the muscles I'm using. But then there's also going to be more exposure to different types of elements that we are going to get through these kind of higher repetition schemes. So, and then as well, just from an orthopedic sense, it feels better on my joints when I'm doing these higher repetition schemes. So there's multiple different reasons why we may not just use one specific rep range. And again, it's just trying to look for a simple one-step solution for how I need to train forever. I just do one high intensity set with this rep range, and that's all I need to do forever. But it's grand until you hit the brick wall, you no longer progress. You need to have different tools in your arsenal to allow you to progress over the long term. That's how you go from being in a gym and making decent newbie gains to making gains 10 years down the line. And just paying attention to the mechanisms is kind of the exact same as the people who are saying, you know, insulin is the reason that people are obese, okay? When there's plenty of epidemiological studies, observational studies that would discount the fact that it is the role of insulin alone, you know? So, you know, I think people need to kind of have a bit more of an open mind. And I think, to be honest, a lot of the narrative is being pushed by people who just want to have a controversial opinion, get a few clicks, and, you know, ultimately are just kind of selling their souls for the likes of fucking TikTok views. So just past 7 p.m, getting the evening steps in. I'm gonna wrap up the video here. So when I go home, watch the first Gaelic football match I've watched in a long time. So Meath, my home county, were playing Louth in the Leinster final, and if you know anything about Gaelic football, the last time they met in the Leinster final, there was some controversy around how Meath won it. Essentially, Meath were down, I think it was maybe 1 or 2 points, and I think it was in extra time, Joe Sheridan, who's one of the full forwards, he essentially just carried the ball across the line, and there's lots of controversy, as you can imagine. People are saying it was a hand pass into the net, people are saying obviously it was carried, like, you know, the footage would like very much show that he carried it into the net, pretty much scored a try. That was actually the last game of football match that I was at in 2010. I'm the type of person that if I play a sport, I'm obsessed with it. Used to be obsessed with Gaelic, used to be obsessed with rugby. I'm hoping that I don't just forget about powerlifting now that I've stopped doing it. I feel it would be hard to, because so much of my community, business, and then he is like tied into powerlifting then as well. You know, powerlifting and bodybuilding are similar, more similar than they are to rugby and Gaelic. So yeah, that's what I spent the evening doing. So amazing match. Louth won by 2 points, and even though Meath man, I'm delighted to see it, if I'm being completely honest. One of my school friends, Connor Grimes, he has been playing for the Louth County team for the last number of years. They've just missed out on winning the Leinster Championship the last few years against Dublin, just came short. And you know, I actually was fortunate enough to work with Connor when he was in his early years on the Louth football team for nutrition. So to see him kind of get the payoff that he deserves, because I know how passionate he is about Gaelic, and I know he is as good as he is. Like this type of guy that, like, when we were in school, probably one of the first times he was in the gym, benched 120 kilos. Like, the guy's a freak. So delighted to see that. And yeah, it's a nice way to kind of finish off the week. So I'm going to finish off these steps. I'm going to get home, I'm going to have my last 2 meals, I'm going to chill out before bed, and then we wake up and we start the week again, and we do this shit all over again another week. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you did enjoy the video. Make sure to leave me a comment if you have any questions that you want me to answer, any topics you want me to cover. Try them in the comments. If you did like the video, leave a like. If you haven't subscribed, you better fucking subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.